Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello, welcome back to the Daily Palace podcast, brought to you by the Global Sports Podcast Network. I'm Joe Lodge. I'm livid that I went to the barbers a week ago and missed the chance to get windswept hair this weekend. Another storm has gone by without any Hollywood producers asking me to star in a Point Break remake. Riding the waves of a Palace point which broke Pep Guardiola this weekend with me is Dan Tanner. How are you doing, Dan?
I'm doing all right. You saying getting windswept hair, mine definitely can do that. You can't see it on. I've got the hat on today, but got the long hair, and I can definitely do a Point Break remake if anybody asks.
Well, maybe that's something for us to do in the off season. Palace pre-season.
We'll look into it. Yeah,
we can follow it and film a Point Break remake on the side. That'd be pretty good. So yeah, as we say, Palace drew 2-2 with an out of sorts Manchester City at the weekend, having twice taken the lead. Despite looking the best team in Europe last season, Palace haven't hit their usual heights so far this one. But how did they perform in this game, Dan?
Oh, I think they played brilliantly, especially when you go 1-0 up inside of 5 minutes against the champions. It was I was absolutely flabbergasted. I didn't have my phone on me. I just looked at it and went, I had to do a double take. I went, hang on, we're 1-0 up. This is 10 minutes into the game. How did that happen? Because I was doing the crossover with Alex and Jules from the City guys, and we were very much this was going to be a long, drawn-out game, and we might be able to nick something maybe at the back end, not barely sit down and we're already 1-0 up. I think Hughes has also been compared to Iniesta on Twitter over the weekend, which I think is a little bit much, but they are amazing assists from him. So maybe if he's starting to get somewhere, especially when I think this podcast was kind of berating him at the beginning of the season for some very, very silly little passes. So yeah, we definitely give him a lot of stick on this podcast, but. That being said, it was a great result. Completely did not see that one coming.
Yeah. No, you're right. It's only fair that we give Hughes his dues now, as we've got the opportunity. He was excellent. I think we'll come back onto him probably in a moment. But yeah, I mean, I agree. I think Palace did a really good job in this game. I think both goals are given to them to some extent by defensive errors by Manchester City. Nevertheless, so it wasn't a spellbinding attacking performance necessarily, but so often this season we've seen Palace have plenty of chances to score, not put them away. So the fact that the finishing was efficient this game was a pleasant change. And on the flip side, City also had to finish their chances. I think they probably had 3 good chances all game, really, and took 2 of them. The best one of them they missed, thanks to Dean Henderson's face, a really heroic stop from, I wouldn't want to take an Erling Haaland shot to the face. I think I would sprint out of the way of the goal rather than flying so heroically towards him if he was one-on-one with me.
It really looked like it hurt.
Like one of the ones that leave an impression of the ball on his face for about a week afterwards. Whether it has or not, I've not seen any photos yet. But yeah, fair play to Dean Henderson. That was pretty special. But on the whole, yeah, City really, really struggled to chart a way through Palace's defence. Pep clearly was left dumbfounded and called it a season to forget after the game, which is usually Palace fans who leave Selhurst saying that, but not on Saturday. There was a pretty good performance, probably quite encouraging. Circling back round to what we were saying before, Dan, did any players play particularly well or poorly, in your opinion, in this game?
Well, we've got to give it to Hughes, absolute legend, for this sort of absolutely fantastic first pass. They just took the entire sort of Man City defence out in one go. Mateta was clever enough not to touch the ball, because if he did, that would have been offside and be completely wasted. and then Munoz finishing it off brilliantly. And then he gets another with a corner goal, which is pretty rare for us, which then sort of hits Lacroix, gets his first goal of the season as well, which is a very, very nice header. No real, wasn't really contested for it. So I think the whole team really played really well. We weren't maybe as dominant as maybe against Newcastle, but we gave City a game, which is what I kind of want from them. And if we keep this somewhat undefeated run going, I think it's 8 undefeated. They're nearly all draws, but we are scoring again, and we are starting to get points.
But still, yeah, it's a strong run.
Yeah, it's positive steps compared to where we were only a couple of weeks ago when we were struggling to even sort of play against Forest. But then we can go and take it to the champions toe to toe, and it's just like, I don't get this team sometimes. We need a little bit more consistency, maybe a bit, but we've still got another. It's still Christmas, so it's still the first half of this mammoth run we have. So, but either way, so as I was saying, they all did really well. Hendo gets a brilliant save, saves it with his face, as we've. Then he had another one where he kind of like tips a half shot that was coming towards the back end. Just tips it away really well. So he's still putting in good performances. Pretty much everybody put on a good shift on that one. So I can't really think of anybody that did a particularly poor job. But we got the 3 points against the champion, so I don't care after that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, everyone put a shift in. The whole unit functioned well. Obviously, right to highlight Hughes, that first assist. It's kind of only him and Munoz who seem to be aware of where the ball is and where the players around them. And even so, Hughes, it's not an easy pass to execute. He's got both centre-backs bizarrely kind of coming out to press him, which creates a window of opportunity, but only a narrow one. It's a very, very narrow little gap between them. He squeezes the ball through with enough curve to put into Munoz's path to finish, which he finished very well. And that corner was awesome, I think. That's most of punditry focused on Kyle Walker's struggles failure basically is just even challenge for the ball from the crowd. But the corner's so kind of it's one he hits it so high and gets it up and down so quickly that he can put it really on someone's forehead right close to the goal without the keeper being able to claim it because it's so high above the keeper at the time that he would have the opportunity. So it's a really it's not easy to do. A really, really brilliant corner from Hughes, and not something you would have considered as part of his game. There's a moment like the last play of the match where the ball broke to him in the air on the edge of the box after one corner. He thought he was going to cap it all off by skulls-ing in a volley at the end, but sadly didn't come off. But nevertheless, a really, really good performance from Will Hughes. Thought Tyrek Mitchell had a good game as well, to name another. He shut down that right-hand side. Savinho is maybe the least popular, least informed right-wing Brazilian since Jair Bolsonaro at the moment, so that might have something to do with it. But still, put 5 tackles in, did a really good job. I enjoyed Mateta's performance. I wouldn't say it was necessarily standout brilliant, but the just old school physical battle between him as a centre forward and Ruben Diaz was fun to watch, and sort of yielded the first goal. It's kind of them scrapping that creates the confusion that then makes the opportunity for Hughes and Munoz to exploit. But I think, as you say, on the whole, the key message is everyone in the team put in a really good shift. No one really made any major errors to speak of, and I think all round very positive. On that positive note, let's have a break for a word from the sponsor. Here at Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform. Zencastr came out the clear winner. 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs. It's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr. So, very positive performance. So positive, in fact, that in Oliver Glasner's press conference after the game, you could detect maybe a sort of twinge of disappointment in his voice that having taken the lead twice, Palace didn't see the game out and win it. Do you think they should have done, Dan?
I think they probably could have done. We were, we get the lead twice against the champions, so definitely we were all over. Not exactly, I wouldn't say all over them, but we took our opportunities when we got them. And especially over the last couple of games where we've started to look a lot more competent, a lot more sort of efficient when we have the ball, I would say. I wouldn't say we're deadly or anything, but a lot more efficient with it. So I think he was getting into the idea that we're moving in the right direction and we're starting to push some of these teams for the whole game now. So he's got going, right, now we're getting the draws, we're getting the results. Can we push it on and try and get the 3 points a little bit more? And I think sort of he's also probably got the idea that, I've actually just essentially almost outsmarted Guardiola here. So just a nice sort of bit on the something he can hang his hat on, essentially. That we took the champions the whole game. So it's a good improvement. It's a very much improved from earlier in the season, as we've mentioned many times. So yeah, I think that's more or less what I was sort of taking from it. That he's wanting more out of the team now. He's got them sort of where they are now. It's to get the 3 points a bit more and to sort of move out of this relegation zone, not just for the team, but probably slightly his own job. Because if it starts to go back the way it was, he could be looking at the hot seat again. So. That's probably what he was almost alluding to, just to keep this momentum going, and we'll see how far we can take it.
Yeah, I think Palace can be disappointed not to have won, in as much as City finished their chances a lot better than they have done in other recent games. Other than that, I don't think they'll be kicking themselves too much. I don't think there's much they could have done about either City goal. It's a really good towering header on the counter attack that gets their first equaliser from Erling Haaland, and whereas we've seen Palace get countered having lost the ball sort of in a bit of a stupid fashion at times earlier this season, this one was a really heroic block from Ruben Diaz after Palace had committed bodies forward in a very responsible, calm way and basically had a goal-bound effort on the way in. And yeah, it all turned on a great bit of defending. I don't think they can be too upset about that. And then the second goal, particularly from City, is just is much more City at their best. Brilliant interchange between Lewis and Bernardo Silva, and returning Kevin De Bruyne, who looked bright in the game. And I think, yeah, I don't think there's much Palace could really have done about either one. So I don't think they can blame themselves exactly for not holding on to it. But nevertheless, it took an efficient City performance in front of goal to thwart them from winning. So I think a draw is probably a fair result, but having been up twice, it's somewhat disappointing in a way. Rico Lewis has now scored 3 Premier League goals. I think they're the only 3 of his career to date, and they were all against Crystal Palace, which I take to mean if Palace were ever to sign him, he would score 38 a season. He was also sent off for a bizarre second yellow in the 84th minute. What were your thoughts on that, Dan?
Oh, I'm pretty sure at the very least it's a yellow card, because he basically goes in and he takes out Chalobah's ankles, essentially. Yeah, doesn't touch the ball, doesn't do anything. Kind of, it kind of hits him it kind of goes straight for the ankles. I think Chalobah's already played the ball out, so it probably is at least a yellow. So if he's on a second yellow, he's already been booked, so he should know better not to go into a rash challenge like that. And he's wildly out of position as well. Because my understanding, he's a right back. So why is he on the left side of the opposition? So he's wildly out of position. So it's almost like he's trying to do almost a professional foul, but the ref kind of just sees it and goes, right, you're not having that anymore. You've already been told off, mate. Don't do it again. So what's he going to do? Do it again. So that's my on it, because I'm very much carry on.
So I was just saying, it was one of those ones that was like a bit of a tussle where I thought it was kind of ambiguous who plays a ball out and who fouls. I thought in normal time it looked like it was just Lewis. Kind of Chalobah plays it out, Lewis stamps him, and it's a yellow. And then when I saw it back, I was like, well, is that the other way around? We're sure Lewis doesn't get the ball out first and Chalobah through him. Good for us that there's no VAR on a second yellow anyway, if that was the case, because they had a decision to make then of whether to award if they did overturn, they might have been forced to award a really incredibly soft penalty against Chalobah. But it was a weird one.
Well, even if it is, City can appeal and try and reduce the back. If not, Lewis gets a free Christmas break. So either way. So some players do that when they're on like yellow cards, get an extra one so they don't have to train on Christmas Day. So very, very older.
Feel every decision.
Yeah. Let's just get out of the Christmas period. I can go and put my feet up for a while. I can enjoy Christmas.
I wonder where he's going. I hope he has a nice holiday. Well, and to wrap up our discussion of the game, Dan, how big a confidence boost is this for Palace going into the big one against Brighton at the weekend? Are City now in a position where you don't take that much confidence from drawing with them at home, or is it still something to feel really buoyed by from Palace perspective?
Oh, I think it's definitely confident. We've been growing in confidence basically, I think, since the Villa game. So it's slowly getting there. And I think the momentum is starting to shift. We do need to still keep getting the results. So if we can try and get at least a point against Brighton, it will go a long way. But we still need to get those wins because we are still very dangerously close to the relegation zone around Christmas. And I don't really feel like having a 4 or 5 months of just slowly grinding out draws against teams that we should be trying to get points on. But getting a point off one of the top 6, we've done it 3 times now. I think 3. So it's United, Chelsea, and City that we've taken at least a point off. So
not to mention a win against Spurs.
And Spurs as well. So our record against the top 6 is actually pretty good. So it should give everybody at the club, sort of at that side of the club, should be really sort of confident and start to sort of believe in themselves a little bit more, because it used to, at the beginning of the season, whenever they conceded a goal, their heads would drop and you'd see them just stop really going forward and everybody just started playing in on themselves. Now it's we've conceded a goal, right, let's go back and get another one. So you can see the shift in the mentality from the earlier games in the season. So it can only be good to go forward. Confidence is always a good thing.
And we're seeing Palace, just with their game at the weekend in mind, we're seeing Palace increasingly effective in embedding in and hitting teams quickly in transition on the break. And I think if that's probably how they're gonna have to play against Brighton, to be honest, I think that's the most likely direction for the game to be going, with the styles of the two teams and form. And it's a way you can hurt Brighton, I think, with their comically high line and stuff like that. So reasons for optimism off the back of that. But let's have a word from the network before finishing up by talking about a couple of transfer rumours. This podcast is part of the Global Sports Podcast Network, the only network bringing you exclusive daily news and views on your Premier League team, the Premier League, women's football and fantasy football. A unique listening experience that puts fans first, bring you the very latest breaking news from your team. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and make us your first listen every day. Global Sports Podcast Network, every club, every day. So, at danger of making us sound like we're now an aviation podcast, we're going to talk about Ryan Pair, or rather a pair of Ryans, and some Palace transfer talk about them. Your first Ryan is an elegant French 21-year-old from Lyon, Ryan Cherki. Highly rated young talent, Cherki had been linked to a move to Palace in January with Lyon and partial Crystal Palace owner John Textor needing to sell a lot of key assets at that club to avoid a punitive relegation to Ligue 2. However, the latest rumours suggest that Palace signing Cherki is now unlikely, with Dortmund and PSG swirling around and preferred by the player. You disappointed by that, Dan?
Maybe a little bit disappointed, because I'm always for more assets, more players on the team, and also some of these sort of really talented ones, because he's one of these players that's slightly knocking on the door of the French national team. He's been sort of scouted by sort of the top teams for quite a while now, so he would have been a nice sort of player to have there. But I wasn't expecting him to show up for Palace, because I think he also rejected Fulham a little while ago, sort of just before the transfer. So I don't think he has any intention of playing in England, or at the very least sort of for one of the, say, middle of the pack teams. He wants to be playing for one of the big clubs. So when you've got the likes of Dortmund and PSG, they're a little bit more enticing for somebody with sort of ambitions of getting into the French national team, winning titles, and things like that. So it's disappointing, but not unsurprising. But then you've also got the sort of slight ownership problem with Texter. It might be considered slightly dodgy, especially when they're in film of being sort of investigated financially. So him showing up at Selhurst Park might look a little bit weird. Slightly less likely, but it's not going to help.
Yes, I think you're spot on there, Dan. It would already have been weird for him to have cropped up at Selhurst Park. He wants Champions League football, and I think has the talent and reputation to go and get that. And whilst obviously it would have been a really exciting signing for Palace, it might be wise for them to avoid any kind of multi-club quagmire with John Textor, avoid Textor's bin fire sale and give it a miss. Even though we might look back on this and 10 years from now, Czech has got a Ballon d'Or in his hand and thought, well, maybe it would have been worth the gamble to get that over the line. But I think for the time being, it's probably sort of just for those reasons sensibly swerved. And also, it would be quite a lot of, even at a cut price, I think it would be like 30 odd million. That's probably a decent chunk of Palace's January budget, and it's maybe not the area they most need to strengthen. But they have got another player in mind in that kind of role. Your second Ryan is the man who sounds most like an auxiliary character in Ted Lasso and World Football, Ryan Kent. Palace are now said to be interested in signing the former Liverpool and Rangers winger, who's available on a free, having left Fenerbahce in October. Do you think that signing makes sense, Dan?
I'm not totally sure now. I had to look up who he was, because when you put him on the sort of the billing tonight, I went, "Who is this guy? I've never heard of him." I had to look him up. He's also not. He's not. We're not the only ones interested in him.
Or something.
Yeah. So it's like I had to look him up. Apparently, he's also been interested. Parties are also Rangers again, Leeds, Leicester City, Ipswich, and most importantly, Preston North End. That's in the last couple of weeks. So for a free agent, it could be. I don't really know much about him, to be honest. But hearing that he's gotten out of Fenerbahce is probably the best decision he's ever made in his life, especially the way the Turkish league is just dissolving into complete and utter dysfunction on a weekly basis. So if we can get him, cool. A free agent signing, so no transfer budget. It'll be on a medical because he's been essentially not training for 6 weeks or so. So yeah, medical and any kind of contract negotiation. So it should be considerably easier to deal with than having to deal with a club as well. But as I said earlier, I'm all for as many reinforcements as we can get. I just need to know who he is.
Yeah, as well. But I'm always in favour of Bosman, just so you can say players been signed the Bosman. That's very satisfying. As you say, for whatever reason, he's made no impression at all in Turkey. I think he started once and played 8 games in the league last season. Did nothing. Didn't really do anything of note in the Conference League. He never put up amazing numbers in Scotland either. He had a sort of respectable but not phenomenal 33 goals and 56 assists in 218 games over there. But just sort of watching him, he was playing there when I was living there for a few years, and he has got something about him. He's got that ability to pick the ball up deep and drive, and he's got a bit of flair to make something out of nothing. All those things can probably only really be said about Eze in the current squad. So he could provide nice cover there, and maybe even a good option to play alongside Eze, depending on how he does, because we know from Elise's time at the club, Eze does really well playing off another player who's on a similar wavelength in that sense. Whether he can translate it in the Premier League, I don't know. I have some doubts. He's not played it successfully at a similar level, really, at any point in his career. But, it's fairly low risk. As I was saying, I'd rather see Palace prioritise strengthening in midfield or wing back, I think, in January. I think they have more pressing issues, but it wouldn't be all of their budget. I don't imagine his wages are that ridiculous, and they wouldn't have a transfer fee to pay. I kind of think Palace, the clubs that they talk about, might be in for him. So Ipswich and Leicester maybe interested in the Prem. You kind of think Palace might be the most attractive option, unless Leicester go on a really good run under Rude now. So you kind of see it happening, and it would make some sense. I don't think it would get anyone off their seats with excitement, but yeah, it might be all right. But anyway, on that exciting end of no one getting overly hyped about Ryan Kent and us not fully knowing who he is, but thinking, well, it might be something. I think
fair enough. We'll take it. Very much the last person. Very much the last person in the queue when you're picking up sort of a PE game. Like, we're going to pick you, we're going to pick you, we're going to pick you, and Ryan's sitting there and going, eventually they're going to pick me. I just know it.
Yeah, it's a bit like when someone offers you a kind of be like something new and experimental on the street, like a blueberry flavoured Magnum, and you kind of go, I'll eat it. I don't know what it is. I'm not sure about it, but fine. But yeah. On that note, we've been giving you wonderful free half-hour of entertainment here. All we'd ask in return is a 5-star review if you've enjoyed it. Helps us be discovered. We'll be back tomorrow, and we hope to see you then. Ta-ra.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.